Welcome to Rubbin' is Racing on this very special Monday edition. It's special because there was no NASCAR, but yet we still have plenty of NASCAR to talk this weekend, or actually this Monday night. In the studio with me, as always, my co-host, Mr. Steve Big Sweat Billmeyer. How are you doing tonight, Steve? I'm doing great. I had the opportunity to spend the last two days, or 2 evenings anyway. Well, yeah, 2 days, last 24, 36 hours with my kids. So it's been a great day. It's beautiful here in North Carolina, and got to see some racing. I'll talk a little bit about that this weekend as well. Before we jump in this, make sure you guys follow the 110 Nation at 110 Nation. Make sure you guys check us out on Facebook. We're coming up on 5 years, April 15th, 2016, 5-year mark. It's hard to believe it has been that long, that quick. It has gone by so quick. Make sure you go over and give us a like so we can hit our 1,000 like mark before that date. And we got a little something we want to give out to 5 of our followers if we get that opportunity. We got 5 days of goodie bags we're going to be handing out. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, make sure that you guys join Steve's Facebook group, NASCAR and Other Racing. I'm going to give him an opportunity right here in a second to plug it. But also, Thursday nights, Racing with Big Sweat, 9 p.m. You guys got to check that out as well. Steve, tell them a little bit about the group and the show. Definitely excited about Thursday night. We've had Eric Saunders on the 110 Nation Sports Show, and a very inspirational story, and a great driver, and just what he's doing and how he's helping change the sport is really second to none. So very excited about Thursday night being here, and be able to listen into Racing with Big Sweat. I had the opportunity this weekend to go to the Fayetteville Motor Speedway, their 48th year of operation. So I applaud them. In a day and era where we hear about a lot of tracks closing, it was great to see Fayetteville be around for another year. And it was a pretty packed house. I would say that there were probably at least 80% capacity in the grandstand. So I was really pleased, especially with the rain that came in, which pushed the start time back about an hour, and the fact that there was rain coming through the area, and we got sprinkled on. I'm not gonna say it was anything heavy. We got sprinkled on a couple times that night, but very, very enjoyable. The Carolina Clash, it was their third race of their season. It's a traveling series in the Carolinas. It was a fun race to watch. The guy they called the Hurricane from Jacksonville led 39 laps, but it was lap 40 that matters. And Rambo from South Carolina, he took him in turn 1 and 2, and never looked back for that last lap. And that was the only lap it really mattered, and the crowd really loved it. So I had a great time out there, and it was kind of one of those things that was, I've asked you on this show what NASCAR needs to do, And and it gave me an opportunity. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to go out to the local track, and it's one of the reasons why Fridays and Saturday nights I'm going to find myself at whatever sporting events. If it's a local baseball team, such like your guys' way, you guys have the Durham Bulls or whatever. We have some stuff like that this way. If it's me make it to the Kinley Speedway or the National Speedway or Ace Speedway or whatever the case may be, it gives me an opportunity to kind of observe where the breakdown is, and so I enjoyed being out there because I know without a doubt that it is not at the local track level because they had a full attendance, and like I said, it was especially with the weather condition, it was great to see so many people be out there and how full they were, and how the people spent their Saturday night, which kind of brings me to my point of telling this whole story. That's how I spent my Saturday night. How does someone that has been in NASCAR, has been a NASCAR fan for so long, such as yourself, what did you do to pass the weekend away? And more specifically, when you was involved with NASCAR and crew chief, and when you guys had the weekend off, what did you guys end up doing? What kind of stuff did you guys do to pass that weekend away? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Um, in the first five races, we've seen some drivers be hot. I mean, Kevin Harvick's kind of off to a hot start. Kyle Busch, either series you look at, in the Xfinity Series race, he was like going in for 4 or 5 straight wins and still had that second place finish with a tire go down. In the Sprint Cup Series, he'd had a top 5 finish every race until once again he had an issue at the very end of the race in the Sprint Cup Series. When you have a driver that is hot like that, how much of an inconvenience is it for a break? And does that break momentum for the drivers, or is it such a necessary break that it really doesn't break any kind of rhythm or, end any kind of hotness that a driver has going on? Uh-huh. That most definitely does. I've never experienced the whole married life, and I don't know if that's ever something I will or want to actually experience. Who knows? But I do experience the kid life. As like I said, I spent the last 2 days and hung out with both the kids, so I understand that kind of changes thing. But talking about Kyle Busch. NASCAR fined him $10,000 and placed him on probation through April 27th for not going to the media center after Saturday's Xfinity Series race. Not what he said on the radio and the tirade he went on about that, but because he didn't fulfill his obligations to the media after the race. And I had the opportunity to have BJ McLeod on a Xfinity Series driver, the number 70, I want to say 78 machine, 74, 78 machine, I can't remember off the top of my head, I want to say 78 though, on the show, and, he likes the fact that, the drivers are expected and required, especially your top 3, to, have these press conferences. He's also been, instructed very, very much, and I want to say like before every race, that if you guys, are heated when you get out of your car and you got a microphone in your face, just kind of step back for a second, give yourself a breather before you reply. Now, I understand that Kyle Busch is probably the most competitive driver out there, and he was going for a streak, and obviously no driver wants to lose a race, even though he did something pretty remarkable, took the white flag, blew a tire, lost the lead, regained the lead, and it wasn't until turn 4 that he actually lost the lead and finished second place after having all these wins in a row. So me being a fan and watching this, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, why are you so upset? You still had one hell of a race and you still finished second. But Kyle Busch, being Kyle Busch, obviously was not happy at all with his results, and obviously the debris and everything else that he wanted to throw out there, as that's why, kind of why he was upset. I guess he was wanting to caution and be able to, be able to win under caution. First of all, $10,000 fine, in your opinion, slap on the wrist, really nothing severe. And second of all, that was my first thought when I was watching the races. When he blew that, when that tire blew, there was stuff going everywhere. So I was kind of surprised. I understand NASCAR wanted an opportunity for them to race back to the caution. I don't think there was any debris that was probably that severe, but I was kind of surprised knowing that there was debris out there. Should NASCAR have thrown a caution? Does Kyle Busch have a legitimate complaint about that? And did Kyle Busch, was it severe enough that's blowing off the media to earn this fine and probation? Was it really worth all that? Oh no. Mm-hmm. Oh well, I mean, if that, it was the last lap, so the caution had been thrown. He would have lost the race anyway, or he would have won the race anyway, depending on what part where they would have thrown the caution. He would have won the race or finished second. Either way, it all depends on when they actually threw that caution. So there wouldn't have been another opportunity, but it makes you wonder because, like I said, there was quite a bit of stuff coming off that car as he was making his way around. Like I said, I don't think it was anything severe, but we've seen cautions thrown for less. And it was funny because I was out at the like I said, I was out at the Fayetteville Motor Speedway, and they had a caution debris debris caution during one of the races, and I'm like, what is this, NASCAR? And so no sooner than I said that, the guy on the PA gets up and he's like, and this is not NASCAR. We will show you the debris. And you can see the guy out there, the official on the track, holding up the debris and everything else, just to make sure everybody saw that there was actual debris on the track. And I kind of got a chuckle out of that because I was just saying that. But I don't know, Kyle Busch. Speak. Yeah. Now speaking of the scanners and them having to police us, now I do have an issue with this. I understand that NASCAR wants to be, be as fan friendly as possible. I understand this, but there's a lot of things that go on over those scanners that I'm sorry, but if I'm a driver, I'm going to say what I want to say and how I feel. I mean, you're in the heat of the moment. This is your career. This is your livelihood. This is a championship. And I don't feel that, this is their when they're out of the car and they're with the fans and they're doing their autograph sessions and their sponsor obligations. Okay, I understand. Keep it PG or G. But when they're in the car, the heat of the moment, and expect them to tone it down, I'm sorry, but I have a serious issue with it. I don't have a problem with people listening to the Scanners, but I think it's one of those things that you got to be 18 and up, and you got to understand if this word, the F-bomb, the S, whatever word out there offends you, then you might not want to listen in, because this is their job. This is their livelihood. It's like going into a mechanic shop and someone busting their thumb, with a hammer or a screwdriver slipping and they cutting their hand. I was a mechanic in the military. That's when my mouth really went south. Now, granted, I can clean it up. I've made so many people, because my customer service and where I've worked, we can be in there and be alone, and it is F this, F that, whatever we're talking about. As soon as our customer comes in, you do not hear a single cuss word come out of my mouth. But when I was in the military, it kind of went down south real bad right there. And of course, I grew up in a household that cussing on my father's side was one of the common things. But I'm sorry, I'm one of those people. I don't necessarily like that aspect, because I don't feel the drivers need to sugarcoat it and make it G-rated in the heat of the moment, and when they're talking to the crew chiefs, when they're talking, to their spotter, if me and I'm a fan and I'm listening in, that's kind of why I would be wanting to rent one of those things and listen in, or buy one of those to listen in, because I want to hear raw footage. I want to hear uncensored, uncut, what it's really like to be listening into, Kyle Busch and when he's upset, or Matt Kenseth or Brad Keselowski or whatever. I don't want some watered down G-rated version of it. First of all, second of all, I wouldn't expect them in the heat of the moment to be that way. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because you've had communication with drivers. You know how it's like in the heat of the moment when things are going on. Are you a big fan of them having to watch what they say in this whole setup, or should it be, kind of looked at and maybe revised that, look, you want to listen in, you can listen in, but first of all, you need to be an adult, and second of all, if you're easily offended by certain words, then you might not want to listen in on it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. And like I said, as much time as they spend with the fans in front of the media, and as much of their day, even on race day, that they give up, so that they give the fans. We both been to the racetracks. We both know how the fans are. I mean, I felt bad when I went to Bristol a couple years ago, and I caught on that once they announced the drivers, they were shooting to the bathroom on the backside. I want to say it was the media center building. I can't remember where the Goodyear building. I can't remember where the bathroom was on the back. It was on the backside though. And so what I was doing is I was standing on the corner where I could see them coming from driver introduction out of my right peripheral vision, but the left peripheral vision, I could see them coming out of the bathroom. So I was getting an opportunity to get a bunch of great pictures of drivers coming and going. And I felt kind of bad because it wasn't shortly after that the other fans started catching on, and so now you had fans interrupting them as they were going to the bathroom, trying to throw autograph stuff in front of them as they were walking out of the bathroom. And I can imagine that there was probably people inside trying to get autographs. But these drivers give up so much of their day when they could spend that day being focused and prepping themselves for the race. So once they jump into that car, I'm sorry, but now this is their opportunity to go to work. This is their opportunity to be business, and so the Fox Sports and NBC Sports and whoever else is broadcasting races this year, they have the bleep button. They can edit it and make it. If we want to go back and listen to the scanners, they know how to edit it to make it so it is PG and able to be on the TV. So when they're in the car, I'm sorry, but I would not have a problem with. Like I said, that would make me want to spend that money because I want to hear the uncut, raw version of what's really going on in those cars. At this point, I ain't really willing to spend that money to rent or buy one because I know I'm getting some watered down version of what they're really wanting to say and what they're really thinking. And I just, every once in a while they slip through like Kyle Busch this weekend, or last weekend. But I'm just not I don't know. I feel that like I said, you're infringing on a private conversation. Even though it's open to happen, you're still kind of jumping into someone else's conversation. And, if you don't like it, then don't be in that conversation. Kevin Harvick was not penalized by NASCAR for not reporting to the media center after finishing second in Sunday's NASCAR Sprint Cup race. NASCAR excused him from him going. That was just thrown into what I was looking at. I don't know if you know any details, why he was excused, why he didn't go. But I thought that was interesting that, they made a big deal about Kyle Busch and finding him, but they turn around and the next day excuse Kevin Harvick from not being out there. It could have been a family emergency or whatever the case may be. And, that could have been, something that there had to be a reason. But it was just thrown in the reports that I saw. Also fined was Danica Patrick, $20,000 for kind of making her way from the safety crew, and placed on probation for 4 Sprint Cup events for approaching the racing surface after she crashed in the Sprint Cup Series race. She walked towards the track to show her displeasure with Casey Kane for the contact. I said this on one of my shows. I can't remember what show. It wasn't Rubbins Racing last week. I don't have a problem with this. It was obviously after this because we didn't know what the fines were, what trouble they were going to get in on that last Monday. I don't have a problem with this. Me being a Danica fan, I'm Danica fan 1, and then Kyle Busch fan number 2. That's my second driver. I don't have a problem with this. As a matter of fact, if she would have got fined $50,000, I still wouldn't have had a problem with this. I'm sorry, but we're still a little too fresh off the Tim Ward Jr. incident, and with these cars, and I'm not trying to throw this up to poke fun at Juan Pablo, and I understand that it was a mechanical failure and what caused it, but it kind of proves my point. You never know what is going to happen even under caution. And when we watch Juan Pablo have the mechanical issue he had and slam into the fuel truck, who's to say someone else doesn't have a mechanical issue, and even though she was on the apron, she was still right there below the white line. Who's to say someone else didn't all of a sudden have a mechanical issue and run her over? That's as simple as how things can escalate very quickly. I don't have an issue with this fine. As a matter of fact, I think the only issue I have with this fine is it probably should have been more. I love Danica, and I will continue to support her, but I don't have an issue with this probation or fine, other than maybe it was a little too easy on her. What are your thoughts on that, and anything else you want to throw in there on that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, the obligation thing, it's the top three, if I'm not mistaken, in the media center, and it might be the top five on pit road when they first get out of the car. I'm not 100% on that, but I know every time I've been in the media center, it's always been the top three that's been obligated to be in there. So, you know, and I agree. We want to see the fire, we want to see the passion, especially Danica fans, because beginning of the season, it's been a rough start. In the last couple races, you're kind of seeing momentum, and you're starting to see her start to trend the right direction. And so when she's taken out of a race unnecessarily, you kind of want to see that passion and that fire to know that yes, that driver is passionate and has got fire underneath her butt about what's going on, and she's just not out there a lot of people just have this whole idea that she's just out there because she's a female and she's what word am I looking for, a marketing piece. Yeah, so I mean, to see it is great, but I understand at the same time that there's and I told somebody, talking to somebody yesterday, and I forget what we was talking about, but there's a time and a place for everything. And I'm sorry, but we've simply as we've seen tires fall off of vehicles just for random reasons. Especially when we talked about the fact that the teams are trying to cheat a little bit, and it's not against the rule books, but try to cheat because NASCAR's letting them do it. Hey, if you only want to put 3 lug nuts, that's fine, but when it falls off, that's on you. As kind of a prime example. You never know. So what's if a crew would only done 3 tires? By the time we got to that caution, they had done wiggled themselves loose, and while she's out there, the tire just comes off, and either the car comes at her or the tire comes rolling at her. And even though it's simply as a tire, that tire would do a lot of damage to that little girl. So it's one of those things that there's a time and a place for everything, and I strongly am against drivers getting it back up on that apron after the whole Tim Ward Jr. thing. And I know it's not the first incident, and I know that there's been incidents after that, but that kind of should have been a wake-up call for everybody, as much national attention, and especially anybody that's over at Stewart-Haas Racing, to see how much it has changed Tony Stewart. That should have been a wake-up call to, hey, I need to be a little bit smarter about how I conduct myself on the track. Dale Jr., I thought this was interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Suffered a concussion, a couple concussions throughout his career, and he is wanting to donate his brain to research when it comes to concussions. What was your thoughts on that? Obviously, I'm not a big Junior fan, but there's 2 things that I can appreciate. Well, now 2 things I can appreciate about Dale Jr. One, when he won Martinsville a couple years ago, I was there for that race. And I don't like Dale Jr. And it just, I don't know, I just don't like him. It's not that I hate him, I just don't care for him. Out of everybody that I've ever listened to in the media center, though, he is by far the funnest and the best post-race interview in the media center I've ever experienced. It was a fun time in there. And 2, to know that he is willing to donate to the sport even after he is done, and even after his life is done, and to help research and make this safer for other people. I think that says a lot about Dale Jr. in my opinion. What was your thoughts when you heard about that, and how big is this for the sport to have somebody that's willing to participate in helping essentially make this sport safer even after he's gone? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. We talked a little bit about Kevin Harvick earlier in the show that NASCAR basically excused him from his media obligations on the Sunday's race. Still a lot of talk out there, a lot of rumors on what the future really holds for Kevin Harvick now that Stewart-Haas Racing is going to Ford next year. And I know we've touched on it a few times throughout the last couple of weeks. Is there anything new going on? Is it becoming more of a? Is the rumor becoming more and more, or is it just one of those things that it is just going to keep circulating over NASCAR until next year, and we see him back in the number 4 Ford Fusion or whatever Ford's bringing versus him being in a Chevrolet? Mm-mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Casey Kane, how long do you think that Hendrick Motorsports keeps Casey Kane around? Do you feel that it is something that they're going to work harder at to get his performance up? Or is it one of those things that car is just kind of a rotating ordeal and really their only focus is Dale Jr., who brings in probably the most money just because of the popularity of him? You got a 6-time champion who's had a career-long commitment from Lowe's, basically, and then you got the new upcoming rising star in Chase Elliott. It just seems that there's really not any focus on Casey Kane. It seems like for the most of the time he's been there's not really been a focus on Casey Kane. So is this? Are we starting to see the end of Casey Kane? Is it time to move on for both of these parties, Hendrick Motorsports and Casey Kane, or are we going to start to see them put more focus into that number 5 machine in hopes that Casey Kane will revive his career? Mm-hmm. And as I say, he's definitely marketable. If I remember correctly, he was top 10 or top 12 last year when it came to making money last year. And, of course, the ladies love him because of his looks and everything else. So, my daughter, she's a Casey Kane fan just because she thinks he's cute. No other reason. It's so obviously he's very marketable. And, so now my next question for you is, can they put that number 5 machine in victory lane? I don't think that they are consistent enough. Even though they've had some strong runs, and there's been even some streaks of good runs over the last handful of years over there. None of them have been good enough that could get him into the chase without a win, especially his last couple of years. So my question to you is, can that number 5 team find a way to find themselves in the victory lane so they can at least lock a spot into the chase, since the odds are they're probably not going to race themselves in? Mm-hmm. So, in other words, for Casey Kane, the best scenario to happen for that number 5 team is when they do win. It is later, more towards about the time for the chase, Richmond or somewhere in that ballpark figure. Right before the chase begins. That way, they got that momentum, they got that win, and it kind of carries them into the chase. Basically, is what you're letting me know. Hmm. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if that number five team can turn around. And, a lot of times it was wrong place, wrong time for Casey Kane, but the inconsistency is what really I think surprises a lot of people when it comes to that team. It's a Hendrick team, and we expect consistency out of all the cars that come out of Hendrick Motorsports, and I just don't think we're seeing that out of the five team. Was there any other topics? I can't remember if there was any other topics. I know you had sent me a message with a handful of things that we were going to discuss tonight. Was there any other topics that I missed out there that you wanted to touch on tonight on this special No NASCAR Weekend edition of Rubbin' Is Racing? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. Mm-hmm. No. And I absolutely positively agree. It's the same conversation for those that like basketball. The comparison of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, the greatest all time, and now Stephon Curry, with what he's been doing with the Golden State Warriors. And I'm the same way. The rules have changed. One, back in Richard Petty's day, they ran a lot more races, and then in Dale Senior's day, NASCAR wasn't maybe necessarily as concerned about all the cars being equal, and so you kind of had a leadway of some cars are going to perform better than others, and then you got Jimmy Johnson's era where they try to make sure everything's exactly the same on every car, and it's down to the driver. And you also got to take into consideration the track differences. That we don't run on some of the same tracks we used to. The rule changes that happen over the year. The different car. There's so many things to factor in. My only complaint right now is I understand that people base their GOAT on championships, and I know championships mean a lot. But we've also transitioned quite a few years since Jimmy Johnson won his last championship, and now to me, if we're going to go into the GOT, the greatest of their time, or the greatest right now, I don't know if I could put Jimmie Johnson in the greatest conversation right now. I'm sorry, but Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch at this present era, and probably the last 2 or 3 years, have a lot to say about who is the greatest driver of this era right now. And I understand that the GOAT and Jimmie Johnson be thrown in that conversation. Kyle Busch and what he's accomplished so far. How many championships, in your opinion, does Kyle Busch have to win to be thrown into this conversation? Not that we feel that it's really a legitimate conversation because of all the changes that happened over the year, but to be thrown into this conversation, how many championships does he win? And because of his reputation, will he ever be thrown into that conversation? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One more topic that I want to. Well, before I say that, was there any other topics that you had that you wanted to throw out there? I got one more question or one more thing I want to throw out there, and then we'll get things wrapped up. We hit our first break. I want one driver, in your opinion, that has surprised you up to this first break, and one driver that has really disappointed you and you was expecting a lot more in the first 5 races. And I definitely agree. That was going to be my disappointment of the first part of the season. I agree with the Clint Boyer, but I'm wanting to still chalk that up with H. Scott Motorsports just not putting the product underneath him. I know the alliance, and it should be there, but I'm going to give Clint Boyer the benefit of the doubt and assume that it's got to be the equipment. But there's more of a chance that you were likely right, and just the mentality of knowing that this was just kind of a 1 year, okay, whatever season until I get to go where I'm going to call home, and probably more than likely where he's going to retire at over at Stewart Haas Racing. So, there's a good possibility. But my big disappointment so far for the first part was Kyle Larson. Now, obviously, the last race that they performed, that incident, in him hitting the wall, I can't remember if that was his fault or not. But when we saw Jamie Mack have the finish that he had last year, we assumed, I forget how far he made it in through the chase, but I think he just barely, I want to say he was at least in the final 8 if I remember correctly. If he didn't, he just barely missed it. I know it was close. To see the way that they finished strong, I was expecting so much more out of Kyle Larson beginning of this season. I think a lot of people just assumed we chalked that up to the sophomore season and things will be back to normal, this season. And even though Jamie Mack's not been strong, I mean, they're still 12th in points. They're still having a decent season. They're only 2 points behind Martin Truex. So even though it's not been, wow, Jamie Mack's, picking up where he left off last season, he's still being somewhat consistent. So I can handle that. Kyle Larson being 24th in points and the expectations, I don't know if we just set the bar too high or we just saw too much his rookie season, and that's what, we're expecting to see every year. But like you said, the financial situation obviously is not a problem. They got the refunds, they got the resources, they got 2 very talented drivers. I was kind of expecting to see a better start to the season for Kyle Larson, especially since I'd love to see him make the chase, and I don't want to see him dig a hole that it was kind of the same way last year. They dug a hole so early that either they had to win or they weren't making the chase, and we would hate to see the same thing happen again this year, where they find themselves so far behind that they're constantly digging themselves, going to have to win to dig themselves out of the hole. And I think that my big surprise so far this year is I'm going to go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. having a 1 top 5, 2 top 10s. The guy that when they broke it down, I forget which company broke it down, but when they broke down 2015, statistically he wrecked more than any other driver in 2015. He was number 1, and to go from that with a team that nobody's really expecting a lot out of it. Roush Fenway still is leaps and bounds behind everybody. And obviously you can start to see this trend go a little bit back into the right direction. To see Ricky Stenhouse to start off the season the way he has so far, as long as he don't finally pop that question to my girl Danica Patrick, so she doesn't go back off the market officially again, we'll be all right. But I'll take that as my surprise in the first part of the season so far. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard to believe an hour goes, even on an off week, how quick an hour goes by. I meant to mention this earlier in the show. I want to make sure I mention this now. I want to thank I-95 Sports Network for adding Rubbiness Racing to their lineup. So I was glad to finally add this show over there. It was one of those things that they asked earlier in the year to earlier a month or two ago to add one of the other racing shows, and that they were looking for racing shows. And once we got back on and we were consistently every Monday night, I let them know, and they were more than thrilled to have us on their network. So I want to shout out to them and thank them as well. Before we get off here, I want you to once again plug your Facebook group and let them know where to find us on Thursday night. Well, make sure you guys check us out on Twitter at 110 Nation. Check out the 110 Nation fan page, 110 Nation Sports. Like I said, April 15, 2016, 5-year mark. We would really love to give away some goodies, but to make that happen, we got to have 1,000 likes. We got to have a goal, and that goal's got to be meet. Not only do we have that going on, we also have I have a competition going on. Well, not really competition, but we have what we call the 110-day. I don't even know what we call it. Basically, what we do is since BTR went to a whole new platform, I can monitor exactly if we are growing every single day. And then since we have gotten switched over to this program, we have 10 for 10 days. And what we have going on is if we hit 110 consecutive days of growth, that I'm going to reward all the shows with a little cash prize for doing so. I kind of stole that from the 82nd while I was at Fort Bragg. They had a thing going on that if they had 82 days without a major incident or death, I can't remember what it was, they got a day off. Well, for every 110 consecutive days, so we can do this 3 times a year, which I would love to give away cash prize to all the shows 3 times a year, knowing that we consecutively grew 110 straight days 3 times a year without a flaw. That's 330 days of growth. That allows, 35 days of non-growth in between. I'd love to have 365 days of growth, but I'll take what I can get. But make sure that you guys continue to check out all the shows. You got Rubbin' is Racing tonight, 7 o'clock. You got the 110 Nation Sports Show, kicks off 9 o'clock every or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. We kick it off at 8:30 on Thursdays, because then we join Rubbin' is Racing, which comes on at 9 o'clock for a super show. We got the Happy Hour Garage at noon on Saturday, and we got the Dirt Talk Hour on Sunday nights at 9 p.m., all times Eastern Standard Time. Not only do make sure you guys check out the shows, check out a show maybe you don't normally check. We got a few shows that we're looking at possibly bringing on the network to add more variety as well. And also spread the word of the shows and spread the word of the fan page. That way others can have an opportunity to help us grow, and we can continue doing great things for not only the shows, but for the fans as well. So make sure you guys check that out as well. Like I said, I'll be flipping back on here at 9 o'clock for the 110 Nation Sports Show. Make sure you guys tune in for that. Until next week, we got Martinsville that we got coming up next weekend. Looking forward to the conversations we're going to have next Monday night. I'm sure that benders are going to be bent and tempers are going to flare. I'm looking forward to sitting back down here next Monday night, 7 p.m. to do this all over again here on Rubbin' Is Racing. Till then, you guys have a great night.